Today, US personnel are injured in an attack on a military base in Iraq. Markets bounce back after a panicked global sell-off. Bangladesh has dissolved parliament after pressure from students. And some battleground states have still not adopted reforms designed to dodge a repeat of the 2020 election chaos. It's Tuesday, August 6th. This is Reuters World News, bringing you everything you need to know from the front lines in 10 minutes every weekday. I'm Tara Oakes in Liverpool. At least 5 US personnel were injured in an attack against a military base in Iraq on Monday, US officials have told Reuters. The Middle East is bracing for a possible new wave of attacks by Iran and its allies following last week's killing of senior members of militant groups Hamas and Hezbollah. It is unclear at this stage whether the attack was linked to threats by Iran to retaliate over the killing of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, an attack that drew threats of revenge by Iran on Israel. The Pentagon has said it will deploy additional fighter jets and Navy warships to the region to bolster US defences. A US judge has ruled that Google broke the law by creating what they called an illegal monopoly over online searches and related ads. The decision is a major blow to Alphabet, Google's parent company, and it could change the way tech giants do business. It's a significant win for the US Justice Department, which sued Google over its control of about 90% of the online search market. 9 staff members of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees have been fired after an investigation found they may have been involved in the October 7th attacks. All 9 were men, but no further details have been given on what they may have done. Australia and Nigeria are among countries to have issued travel warnings about the UK. Violent disorder and anti-immigration protests have been seen across several towns and cities in the past week. On X, Elon Musk posted that civil war is inevitable, with the British Prime Minister's spokesperson calling his comment unjustified. Japanese stocks jumped at this morning's market open, underpinning a sharp recovery in Asian markets after central bank officials said all the right things to soothe investor nerves. Wall Street also looked steadier, with both the S&P 500 and Nasdaq futures rebounding. US central bank policymakers pushed back on Monday against the notion that weaker than expected July jobs data means the economy is in recessionary freefall, but also warned that the Federal Reserve will need to cut rates to avoid such an outcome. That's after US stocks ended with steep losses on Monday. Dan Burns is our US economics editor. Dan, was this sell-off about panic, or is there data to suggest that there are deeper problems in the US economy?
It's hard to know exactly what the psychology behind a sell-off like this is. It's been sudden and it's violent. Something like $4.5 trillion in paper wealth has been zapped in the last 10 days or so, most of that in the last 3 trading sessions. But it doesn't yet appear that there is an abundance of economic data that suggests that the signal from the stock market about a recession is fully warranted.
Yeah, what is that data? What is the actual state of the US economy right now?
Well, activity is certainly slowing, but it is not so far by most metrics coming to a standstill. Gross domestic product growth in the second quarter was 2.8%. That was double the first quarter rate. So for the first half of the year, it's still above what most economists see as the potential for the US economy to grow.
What are the politics here for the Fed?
The calls from political circles on the left and on the right for the Fed either to take action now or to restrain itself from taking any action puts an uncomfortable political spotlight on the Fed, particularly as we approach the November 5 presidential election. The Fed will do what it sees as necessary regardless of all that jawboning from both sides. but it is something that will taint or at least color its actions from here with a bit of a political hue that it really doesn't welcome.
Looting inside the residence of Bangladesh's Prime Minister in Dhaka. Crowds stormed the building on Monday after Sheikh Hasina resigned and fled the country. People were seen taking televisions, computers, gym equipment, furniture, fish, and even a large toy car, as soldiers stood by, helpless to stop them. The violent uprising has left Bangladesh's immediate political future unclear. Parliament has been dissolved, but what happens next? Sudipto Ganguly is covering the story for us.
The students who were leading the protests all throughout the last month and a half, they have made it clear who they want. They want Bangladesh's Nobel Peace Prize winner, Muhammad Yunus, to be the main advisor for the interim government. Dr. Yunus is currently in Paris undergoing a minor procedure, but he has said he will be back to Bangladesh as soon as possible, and he has agreed to take the role on.
Why is Yunus so important to the students?
The students still fear that the movement that they have put together might be just, overtaken by some political party or the other. They actually want Muhammad Yunus to lead the interim government because he is someone who is globally acclaimed. He has a background of running a number of big companies, and he comes from a background of economy. What Bangladesh needs most is someone who can look after their economy.
And do we know why the army turned against Hasina on Monday?
From what we have heard from multiple people that we have spoken to, the army refused to provide security to Hasina's government anymore. They said, you have called for a curfew, but we are not going to be the one who is going to enforce the curfew. We are not going to fire on our own citizens or the students if they march towards Dhaka. The way her official residence was vandalized is quite breathtaking. I was there 7 months before when Sheikh Hasina spoke to us after her fourth straight victory in the elections. But it seemed like an outburst against her because people were not able to exercise their democratic rights. They called almost a second Independence Day yesterday for Bangladesh.
The wait is nearly over. Kamala Harris will appear with her VP pick at a Pennsylvania rally later today. Sources tell Reuters she's narrowed her search down to 2 finalists, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Whoever she picks, the location of the announcement illustrates just how important Pennsylvania is in this election. But Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, another key battleground state, have failed to adopt electoral reforms intended to avoid a repeat of the chaos from the last election. Nathan Lane is covering the campaign.
In 2022, Congress passed this law, the Electoral Count Reform and Presidential Transition Improvement Act. And what it did is it just sort of set a lot of parameters around how the electoral count will be administered, the process, and importantly set this new mandatory December 11th deadline for all states to submit their certified slates of presidential electors. It also put an onus on the states to update their own codes, their own laws around election administration to make sure that essentially they can conform with the new federal law and certify their own state elections in time to meet that new deadline.
What are the risks of not adhering to these new deadlines?
By not adopting state-level laws to conform to the new federal guidelines of the new federal law, you essentially open the door to ambiguity. You open the door to potential chaos. In 2022, a lot of county level officials said, hey, wait a minute, we're not going to certify. And it led to the state's own certification being delayed by several weeks. Well, a delay is important because it creates time. It creates a vacuum into which partisan actors and potentially not good actors will use that vacuum to try to sow doubt about the validity of that state's election. If the election comes down to Pennsylvania and you've got a situation where a bunch of county level officials in Pennsylvania are saying, we're not going to certify. It just creates the opportunity for chaos.
Before we leave you, here's our recommended read. And today's is all about killer heat in New York. The story focuses on how some landlords are opposing tenants' rights to air conditioning, even as US heat-related deaths are on the rise. You can find a link to it in today's pod description. And for more on any of the stories from today, check out Reuters.com or the Reuters app. To never miss an episode, subscribe on your favourite podcast player. We'll be back tomorrow with our daily headline show.